Hello, ladies and gentlemen, listeners of this podcast. Today's episode is a bit different. The most obvious difference, of course, is the language. This episode will be recorded in English language, but I believe that content matters, so there should be no problem at all. Maybe I should just mention this is the first episode which is not recorded in our Slovene language, so that's why it's a bit different. Today's guest is Jose Antonio Morales, the author of new book called Fair Enough. So, Jose, hello, how are you?
Hello, Matei. How are you? I'm very fine. Very happy to be here.
Great.
A bit ashamed that I still didn't learn Slovene well enough, like to speak after being 20 years in Slovenia. But shame on me.
Yeah, but there's still time, so
Yeah.
maybe that day will come also. Um, Great. So let's begin where we usually do with a short introduction. Who is Jose and what is his or your mission?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Peru in 1973, 4th of February. So I'm freshly new with the 50 years old
Oh,
mark.
congratulations.
Thank you. And I was very much into technology. Okay, so at the beginning, since I was a little kid, I loved technology. I thought that computers at that moment were able to connect information and people. That was not true. Okay, there was no internet yet. And maybe because of that confusion, is that when I grew up enough, I opened my first business, and it was actually an internet service provider. Um, I had a crazy failure there um, that basically catapulted me into working with Microsoft, and not as an employee, but as a very close partner. And we made amazing things there in South America, in Peru. And so I considered myself 100% an IT person, right? Then I get to know Tatiana, who is today my wife, and we decided to live in Slovenia, so to start our family in Slovenia. So we did so, and soon after I continued with the belief of me as an IT person working with Microsoft in Slovenia. And I had my golden years, I would say, professionally. It was really fantastic to be with people so open-minded and creative, and I felt part of the team, and it was just great. But then, when I had 49 years, I was living in New York with my family, and I had this kind of bothering question that was telling me or asking me if that's it, if I already arrived to the moment where I know myself, where uh, and I didn't want to believe that that was it. So I kind of made a decision of moving out of the world of technology to not start a business again on technology, directly on technology, and to do something else. So we returned to Slovenia in the year 2012, and I didn't know what to do. So it was a complete turning of a corner where I discovered a completely different aspect. I don't know if discovered or created, but a completely different aspect of my life. And well, 10 years forward today, well, a bit more than 10 years, I can tell you that I'm feeling completely satisfied with the decision, um, although it has been pretty tough. So now I'm very much into community building. I'm the founder of a co-working space in Murska Sobota. I'm very proud of it, and I've been very much into social businesses and social entrepreneurship. Uh, I'm the first person from Slovenia that got into a very important program called the Visionary Program by Ashoka, Austria. And yeah, so a part of this, in parallel to the co-working and the social entrepreneurship, uh, happened something uh, that was the beginning of a series of events called Fear and Fail. And we're going to get 10 years since the beginning of Fear and Fail. And that changed my life because it was just an innocent exploration of what is the relationship between fear and failure. And I learned so much by coaching the speakers that changed my life. And because of that, I am now having problems defining who I am because I, I am so many different things, right?
Great, great story. And when you said that you changed the course of your life, how old were you? About 40, if I understood you correctly.
Yeah, I was about 40.
Yeah.
Uh, I came to Slovenia. I mean, I returned to Slovenia and I decided to take my time to think which kind of business am I going to do if it is not technology. I thought on starting something about traveling with entrepreneurs, but for some reason it was not working well. So the companies would understand the trip that I was offering as some kind of a vacation. Therefore, it had no business value for. But I know now that companies are using more and more the same kind of idea, right?
Mm,
Of taking their teams to travel, to get inspired, to visit cases or
mm,
successful cases, etc. So, like almost always in my life, I some of my ideas are like very much in the future. So this first idea was one of them, and when I was almost desperate because I was tired of riding my bicycle and gardening, uh, is when I heard one keynote speaker in one known Slovenian conference complaining to the uh, organizers of the conference that how come they didn't know to learn from their failures. And that shocked me in such an incredible way because everybody says everywhere that we learn from failures. So, how is it possible that we do not learn from failures,
yeah.
right?
Theory is one, and reality um, appears to be different. No, I asked you how old were you because I actually you reminded me when I was reading. I don't know. I think one of the psychologists. It was probably Jung. He said that up to 40 years old, men usually seeks for success, like financial success, to do things well and so on. And after 40, usually that behavior changes, and you start to seek something greater, to contribute and to be a part of something higher, bigger than yourself. And you just reminded me on that
Yeah,
topic.
and that was really very much going through my head, right?
Mm,
But I was like, so I was 39 years old when I decided to make the change. So I was kind of getting ready for a middle age crisis. So I
mm,
said, you know what? I will create my crisis before it happens, and I'm going to kind of force a change. But I was not satisfied. There was something disturbing me. Uh, it's like I arrived to a place that was not enough for me to feel fully satisfied.
mm, mm. Great, great story. Um, but let us talk a bit more about the book. We already You already mentioned some background of the book, but the title of the book is Fair Enough. And my first question was, why this topic? Why fear? And I wanted to ask you if you could give us some background. You already mentioned the story of the keynote speaker, but there's probably more that pushed you into this direction.
Yeah, there is so much more. To me, the whole story of fear is like a full life of experiences and conversations and learnings. So when I started Fear and Fail, it began in Ljubljana with one conference. There we have amazing speakers from Slovenia and from different parts of Europe, and something happened in that event that I never saw before in my life. And it was that the audience was like inside of a magic spell. They were enchanted with what they were listening. It was like there was no one person that was not really paying attention and being touched by the stories. And when the event finished, I promised the audience that I was going to organize more of these events. And I wanted to discover what happened that this environment was created, and what was this, right? And I learned that it was empathy, that the vulnerability of the speakers when telling the raw story of failures managed to connect with the audience with this special instinct that we have, that is the instinct of empathy. So I said, okay, how am I going to replicate empathy in further events that are smaller, not so sophisticated? And I made kind of a little methodology, and it worked every single time. I had I coached more than 60 speakers, and we made chapters in 6 different countries, and there were events going on everywhere, and everywhere the experience was the same. So as soon as someone speaks about their failure from their heart, everybody connects, and everybody can feel the same than the speaker. And the incredible thing is that everybody was raising their hands and trying to support the person that was telling a story, right?
Mm,
But not only that, I also saw that some of the speakers, I would say maybe a 60% of them, after their speech, had kind of radical changes in their life. So, me as a witness and a participant on that process, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And of course, at that moment, we already knew that failure hides fears. That basically, uh, failure is amazing because it tells you which fear caused the failure. But we do not usually think of failure like that, right? We normally go into, okay, what happened that we failed? And then we analyze the mechanics, the circumstances around the failure, so that we are not going to repeat the same mistakes again, right? So indeed, we stop repeating mechanical mistakes, but for some reason, after a few years, we come up with a similar case of failure, and then we're asking ourselves, how come that the years pass and I'm still screwing up in this specific area of my life, right?
mm,
And what I found is that fear is hidden. below all these processes.
Hmm. And how would you describe fear? What is fear for you?
Yeah. So I the first thing is that fear is kind of an alarm. Okay, it's like the alarm for waking you up. So it's just telling, "Oops," that's it. Okay, it doesn't have really an intention. So fear doesn't come with a specific content, right? With a specific message, other than, there's a is going to happen something that you don't like. There's something here that might be dangerous, kind of. Okay, but fear itself doesn't have that content. Fear is just a reaction from a perception. So your body perceives something and alerts you. Okay. Now, what we do, the same thing that when we don't want to wake up, we smash the alarm and continue sleeping. So we ignore the call from fear and we get used to it. So we don't feel it anymore, and then we continue our lives. And then, okay, so that's the first thing. And the other thing is that it's very practical, at least from my point of view, to divide fear in two. Okay, so one part of fear is this um, existential kind of fear. So a fear that is trying to protect your body, your life, your physical integrity, right? So if your life is in danger, the instinct comes and you're going to jump or you're going to do something, right?
This is preconditioned by the evolution of
Exactly.
humans.
So
Okay.
and it is important to make the difference, because a lot of people tell me, no, fear is good, because without fear, I could cross the street and a truck would kill me. Yeah, okay, but that's a confusion. It is true that fear is going to help us to protect our lives, but that's one kind of fear. And basically, we don't have a lot of control over it. Okay, it's
Hmm.
more of an instinct. But then there's another kind of fear, that I call psychological fear, that is your mind trying to protect you from something, from an experience of the past. So if you went to your school and you had to sing in front of your friends and you felt ashamed and the people were laughing at you, you say, okay, this is something I don't like, right? So then the next time that someone puts you in a situation where your mind can anticipate that you maybe will have to be singing, you are going to do whatever is possible to avoid that situation.
Hmm.
Or maybe you think that you're going to be facing it and you're going to say to your friends, I am not a singing person. You can sing all what you want, I will listen. But please, friends, family, do not do this to me. Okay. So you created a psychological definition of who you are, right? So I am not a singer,
Hmm.
right? Until the moment that something changes. I don't know, you're very happy, you go to the shower and you start singing, right? And your couple or a friend, whoever comes and tells you, hey, actually, you have pretty good voice. And you have to agree with that, right? And you finally discover that part of your potential is connected with singing in this case, right? So the psychological fears are essential to understand because we can do something about them.
Okay. But what is the right way to approach this fear? Should we be just should we just accept it and be familiar with that feeling and try to overcome it, or what is the
Yeah.
right approach?
So from all what I've read and from all what I've seen, um, there is work that needs to be done. Okay, so the first thing is to recognize what is the fear that is stopping you from achieving your best potential. And if you ask the question to everybody, you will find a lot of I don't know, right? So
Mm,
they are going to be saying, I don't really know. I don't know why I stuck. I don't know why. Okay, so there's a lot of not knowing what it is. And in my opinion, the reason is because fear became part of your personality. So it is kind of, I'm not a singer, I'm not a dancer, I'm not a guy that likes to make electric connections or build IKEA furniture, right? So uh, those are identifications with your personality. So basically, removing a fear from you means removing a bit of your personality, and that creates another fear, right? So I wouldn't say that it's only is as easy as to recognizing the fear, because as I'm telling you, a lot of them we don't know, but it is to go even deeper and to find fears that you don't know you have.
mm,
And in order to do that, the easiest technique that I found is analyzing your failures, right? So when you, and it doesn't have to be a big failure, it can be something small, and you say, what fear could be responsible for this failure? And fear of me, my fear, right? At the beginning, you don't get it. The question is not easy and you cannot find anything. But after a bit, you will find out at least something. And then when you find that something and you ask yourself, when was the first time that you experimented something like this? You're going to find out that it was a long time ago when you were in school trying to sing and your friends made ridiculous of you. And then you're going to find out that it's an illogical thing. So that pattern, that psychological pattern, is no longer valid. It's like a bug of the software of the past,
mm,
is still there. And now you found that it's illogical. And then what happens is that the next time that you face the same fear, you have a different relationship with the behavior. So you are going to say, you know what? I'm going to sing. I'm going to sing. I don't care. What? And your friends are going to tell you, are you crazy? Wow, this is amazing. Put his favorite song. And then you are actually feeling empowered to do so, right? And when you do it, you have the support of everybody, and everybody enjoys it. So you already went over that fear. Now, if you see this, give me a second. Can you see this, the
mhm, mhm.
babushka?
Yeah.
So you have another one inside, right? So the thing is that when you uncover one fear and you get over it by accepting
Mhm.
it, by recognizing it, another shows up.
Yeah. So for those who are not watching and they are just listening, you just showed us the what's that babushka,
Matryoshka doll, yeah.
which is more figures inside
Yeah, it's
of
the
each figure.
Russian nested doll,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
there's one small, then the smallest one is within the bigger one, and like that for
Mm-hmm.
a few layers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this actually reminds me not the babushka, but the story about overcoming fear on the coaching exercise where we write down all significant events from our past and which behaviors were created at that exact event, and then you see what did you just created by yourself for yourself, and if you are the one who created this behavior, you are also the one who can change it. And it's quite interesting also for me that we are holding to some patterns which are, like you mentioned, we learn something in, I don't know, primary school, I don't know, at 5 years, 7 years old, and we keep those patterns sometimes for the whole life, and we usually don't are not aware by ourselves that we can change that pattern for ourselves. So overcoming fear, it's in this way, it's really important.
It is essential. It is
Mm,
essential
mm,
because as soon as you start removing those fear patterns, little by little, I call that process deconstructing fear. Okay,
mm,
so what happens is that you start feeling more free because all these limitations that were imposed by the fear pattern are no longer there.
mm,
So as soon as you get out of this castle of bricks that we create around ourselves, you find finally not only that you can move your body or you can go in any direction, but you don't need windows to see only in front of you. You can turn your head and you can see everywhere around. So it is very empowering, and I think that our society basically is kind of a factory of fear. It is based on a belief on fear, and we buy the idea of our society. Therefore, uh, we start believing that in order to be a good citizen, we need to behave in this or that way, and that we need to follow this and that step.
mm,
But
mm,
what we are seeing lately is that there are multiple ways of becoming a good citizen, and those ways are not necessarily what society was recommending. So I think that we are beginning an era where our society starts deconstructing fears as well. So it's not only the individuals doing it as entrepreneurs, as freelancers, as uh, free professionals, independent professionals, but also teams inside of corporations and companies that start watching the potential of unleashing the best of every single one of their members, right? So yeah, I'm, as you can see, I'm a lover of the topic, and
mm,
I really think that if we start understanding what fear is, how can we use fear to recognize the patterns that are not beneficial to us, we can transform not only ourselves but the civilization where we live.
mm. Yeah, but the old, I don't know, it's not a convention, but the old way of doing and business and running the society as a country, it was always somehow based on fear. Society was usually controlled by fear, and also if we look that older approach in companies, people usually feel that if I won't do as they say, I will be somehow punished or something will happen to me, and that fear is always present. So also the productivity is the result of fear, which is now slowly changing.
Yeah.
Hopefully, with more preachers of this topic like you, the world will change faster. But yeah, hopefully this will change soon.
I see myself more as a symptom of the change than a creator of the change.
Mm,
So I think that, like me, there are many others that are talking more and more about fear. And it's not that we are the ones that are going to change the world. It is just that we are some of the first ones changing. Uh, but I think that this is a trend. And you are totally and absolutely right that our society, our civilization has been built on fear because it was needed. We really had to defend ourselves from cold,
mm,
from
mm,
hunger, from whatever was there outside. But obviously, that we already went through that. We don't have to be afraid anymore, right? And it is incredible to see, for example, when you go to Twitter, young people recommending you, right, strongly and confidently to grind, to work hard, to do, and do. And then you see, if you follow those accounts at 3 or 4 or 5 months later, a lot of them are burning out.
mm, mm,
And they insist that burnout is actually some kind of a manifestation of doing what is needed.
mm.
And that, I'm very sad because of this, right?
Yeah, but now I just remembered we are probably really one of the first generations ever on Earth that we can be quite not afraid. We can sit, I don't know, um, outside the woods, and nothing will happen to us. We can live on a beach for a month, and we will survive. Nothing will happen to us. So we are really safe in terms of surviving. If we are comparing our lives with the lives of our ancestors. So we are
Yes,
probably
and
not aware of this.
exactly. We are not aware. We are in automatic pilot and we are just moving forward and walking and doing the best that we can to keep our
Mm,
families, etc., etc. But then we don't stop to think a bit deeper,
mm,
right? So, of course, I go to a party with my friends and I start talking about my philosophical things, and everybody gets bored, and everybody prefers to start the fun than having the deep conversation. But I start thinking that creating spaces where to philosophize, it is really important.
mm,
And in the co-working space in Moscow Sobota, we do that. So the members of the co-working, sometimes they call me to have a conversation. So then it's like a space that helps you to go deep,
mm,
right? And then they start finding their own patterns, and then they start finding their own solutions. They get inspired by the conversation, and they change. So I think that that's something that we need to create inside of companies, inside of organizations, in everywhere.
mm. Yeah, even if we compare this with probably some ancient, I don't know, Rome, Greeks, and so on, philosophy as a part of everyday life was much more present than today. We are
Yeah.
pretty much hurrying through our
We are in
lives.
such a rush, right? Because we are in
Mm,
such a competition, and the cake is so small, at least in our heads, that we are just not paying attention to opportunities. We just want to listen to the trends, to whatever is fast to get. And unfortunately, we pay attention to what we believe is going to give us something back fast.
yeah, that instant
Yeah.
success formula. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, and that is a bit of an extreme that I'm sure is going to cause other kind of problems that will get us closer, actually, to live in a society with less fear and less patterns of fear, more entrepreneurial, let's say.
Mm, mm, great. Let's just talk a bit more about the book. What is we now know what's the main topic of the book, but can we just say what the reader can expect out of the book? So what the reader can learn.
Yes. So this topic of fear is a topic that a lot of us do not want to learn about. And the reason why is because we associate fear with the sensation of being afraid. Okay. But
Mm,
fear, psychological fear, that is the one that I talk about, is a bit different. It doesn't necessarily produce you a feeling, but it produces results. So whoever that reads the book is going to have a different perspective on the topic. And that different perspective is going to make it easier for them to work on the theme of fear. Uh, I tried to make this book 2 times in the past, and they were a bit longer and more complicated. And I was trying to write like a writer, and I'm not a writer. So I was using words that were too complicated. English is not my native language, and so I just put out everything out of proportion. But some friends gave me feedback, and they said we need something practical. We need something uh, that can help us reflect. So inside of the book, there are a lot of questions, and are not questions that you find everywhere. Are questions that I found important during these 10 years of organizing events and coaching people uh, to talk about their stories of failure. And the whole sequence of the book will help or will support anybody to create a different perspective that is not my perspective, right? So I'm inviting them to create their own.
Great. Um, you also prepared our listeners some extra deal for those who are interested to read the book. Could you tell something more about your special offer also?
Yeah, well, so what I did is a special link with a special discount that it goes over the normal discount that we have
Okay, great.
when I'm making campaigns in social media. So I thought that anyone that reads or listens to this podcast uh, is already a person that is on the path of personal development and growth, already understands that. So I wanted to motivate them to get the copy.
Great. I will put the link in show notes and also when I will share the episode on social media so everybody will be able to find it and to order a book, of course. And
Super.
now I would like to go also on that usual questions that we have on our podcast. Maybe we won't do all of them, but just a few of them. So, since this is the in Slovenian language Teorija Uspeha success theory podcast, always ask the question: what is your definition of success, and who do you associate the word success with, and why?
Yeah. So to me, success is being capable of feeling all right despite the circumstances. So I'm not saying feeling great, okay, or feeling really happy. When we feel in peace, even the things that are happening around us are terrible, I think that is already success. So my interpretation of success connects everything because from one side, the circumstances can be going right or wrong economically, in terms of health, in terms of
Mm.
family issues. But if you manage to be solid, strong, equanimous, then I think that this is the biggest success.
Okay, great. Thanks. And one other question, which I believe that you have quite a lot of resources to offer. So I wanted to ask you if you have some book or maybe podcast documentary, something that has helped you in your life and you would recommend it also to the listeners of this podcast.
Yes, well, there's one book that not everybody knows about. You know, I found an edition of this book in Ljubljana in the antiquariat for €1. And it's a book that is very difficult to find, but it, right now you can find it in audio version also. It's called The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts. This book should be obligatory in all the universities of the planet. Alan Watts is a philosopher, and he articulates his philosophy in a way that is so incredibly and powerful, especially for Europeans and Westerners. There's another one that I have here beside that is Humble Consulting by Edgar Schein. I love
Okay.
this book especially because I met him and I talked to him, and yeah, well, he encouraged me a lot with this. There's another book for everybody knows Brene Brown, Dare to
Mhm.
Lead. She is the one that let me see that what was going on in the events of Fear and Fail was empathy. Okay, so her research is the one that helped me find out. And then there's another book that is called When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. That is, she's a nun, uh, a Zen nun, and she talks about failure. She talks about fear in some ways that are just magical. So those are books that I care about. You before you ask me if I identify some personality with success, and I don't. I've been looking for. So it would be easy for me to say that Alan Watts is a person that I connect with
Mhm.
the topic of success, but he died as an alcoholic, and then I find in so many amazing lives that or there were I don't know, they had always something negative, right? and
Yeah.
and and I believe that that's how life it is, right? So I probably when I will die, someone will say, ah no, Jose was a mess in this and that topic. He was maybe good at this, but so I tend to look for inspiration, but I never get too attached to an
Mm.
author.
No, I just you remind me of, I don't know who was the participant of an interview. I think it was Robin Sharma, the author of Monk with Red Ferrari, and
Uh-huh.
they asked him for 10 advices or something for success, and he said, number one, just don't die. Stay healthy. If you will be healthy, you will be able to create many things in life. So uh,
I would agree with that. Yeah.
great. We covered some ground regarding your book. We also answered two of our usual questions. Is there something that we didn't speak about during our conversation and you would like to point out because you think that this is something that our listeners should hear about?
Yes, there is something important that I would like to say. I'm living in Slovenia for around 20 years. I love this country. I live in Prekmuria, and I'm a proud citizen here or resident. Uh, and I see that in Slovenia we have a lot of fears. And I see that in comparison with some of the countries around us, we do not yet master cooperation. And I think that it has a lot to do with our culture and some of our ancestral fears, right? So things that we inherit with our culture, and I think that we need to do something about it. I think that we need to make a step forward, learn to cooperate, support each other better,
Hmm.
um, so that we can compete better as well.
Hmm. That one I fully agree with. So um, are there some workshops, maybe in the near future, that you are running that we can mention and invite the listeners to participate?
Well, you know that the work of finishing the book has been monumental, and I didn't have time to schedule
Mm.
anything, but I'm very, very serious in starting again with fear and fail events. And that means that we are going to get two or three speakers that they are going to share their stories of failure. And before they share the stories, I'm going to prepare them so that they will find what is the fear that caused the failure story, and then they will present it to the public. So I promise to give you information as soon as I have it.
Great. Thanks.
But if someone in your audience has the idea of who should I talk to, or if they want to volunteer to tell their stories, I'm very happy. I'm available everywhere, so you can find me in Twitter and LinkedIn, in Facebook.
Mhm.
Facebook, I don't see so much, but LinkedIn and Twitter, yes.
Okay. So if you are listening to this and you have a story, contact Jose, and you will talk about the potential presentation of fear and failure. So great. Thanks for this. And maybe also you mentioned these events, that the empathy on these events. This is probably something about showing publicly the vulnerability and releasing that part of fear that you have, and also probably on the other side, watching the presenter releasing this fear. It makes that connection between the presenter and the one who watches. This is probably that special ingredient that makes things special.
Absolutely. I think that empathy should be one of the top priorities inside of any company.
Mm,
Learn how to develop environments of empathy, because like that, the bosses, the managers are descending into the realm of normal persons. It's not that they are not, but their employees sees them in a different matter, in a different way. So as we align companies with their visions, with their purpose, and with their goals, I think that we need to align the teams, so that everybody recognizes the humanity in everybody else.
mm,
And empathy is essential.
yeah, great. Good closure for this episode. So thank you, Jose, for taking the time for this discussion and for sharing your wisdom with us. I wish you all the best with the book, and to all the listeners, check out the special offer link, and of course buy the book, read the book, digest the book, and let us know what did you learn in some comments. Give us some feedback also on this our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mate. It's a pleasure being with you.